Welcome to the Intelligence Amplifiers, podcast that celebrates the people who make the intelligence a collective superpower. In every episode, we uncover the stories of learning and development leaders who amplify knowledge, break down silos, and empower teams to thrive. These are the enablers of insight, the ones turning expertise into action and shaping the future of work by ensuring that the right knowledge reaches the right people at the right time. So, if you're ready to explore how the intelligence is amplified and shared across organizations, you're in the right place. Let's dive in. Hello, and welcome to the latest episode of Intelligence Amplifiers. Today we have Denise Rodriguez joining us. Hello, Denise.
Hi, Marco.
How are you?
I'm doing well. How about yourself?
I'm doing well. Great to have you in this episode. And I know these days you run a learning and development at a fairly large retailer, and we'll get to that. But I'm always curious about people's early career, and you started in studying marketing, I believe, right?
Yeah. So I studied marketing and I got to my senior year in college and I found that I was doing courses that were really focused on product. And there were certain products that I just couldn't get enthusiastic about. They felt kind of trivial to me in the impact that they made on people's lives. And that's when I had a moment of reflection that it's really important to me, if I'm going to market and sell a product, that it's something that helps people and that I think makes an impact. So it prompted me to reflect on my own experiences and what products had made an impact in my life. And I had recently been a consumer of international education. I had studied in France the year before that. And while I wouldn't see the full impact of an experience in international education for years after that, I could see the immediate impact that it had. And that made me want to work in the field of international education. And that's what drove me to work as a recruiter and advisor for international students at the University of South Florida.
Got it. And I remember you and I talked a little bit about being multilingual, right? So that was something that was important to you, and I'd love to understand also how you see that, like speaking multiple languages actually translates into leadership and that mindset, which we'll talk about as well. Any quick sort of opinions on that?
Yeah.
How languages help with
Yeah,
sort of like mindset?
definitely. So I guess, look, from the business side first, we're always talking about scalability, right? And to me, before there was like a big word, it was about, okay, if I can speak multiple languages, I can maximize my impact, because I can connect with so many other people, especially in a live and simultaneous situation where if you're missing that skill, you're missing an entire group that you could connect with. But for me, languages have been about optimizing for impact and opportunity. And speaking French and Spanish, you don't always know where those opportunities will come up, but in every role I've had in a large global organization, I've been able to use them in one way or another. And so for me, as it relates to leadership development, I think it's about being agile in terms of how you approach things and recognizing that there's always more than one way to approach a situation or an idea, just based on knowing that there's so many different cultures out there and there's so many different ways to address the same problems that we all face.
Got it. Yeah, that makes sense. Optimizing for opportunities, and languages as a way to open doors. Going back to becoming a recruiter for an international school, after that you got into instructional design, but I believe you got into that through volunteering first. Was that what opened the doors?
Yeah. So, I think, look, like a lot of people when they're early on in their career, it's all about hustling for the next opportunity and to make your way in the door. Look, I will tell you, I've believed throughout my career in the power of networking and the power of professional organizations. And through those, I was able to get internships voluntary internships that then led to a role as an instructional designer. So for me, that was a lesson in create the opportunity to be in the right place at the right time with the right people.
Got it. I also see it as paying forward, right? So you give first what you want to get, right? So volunteering as a way to kind of um, contribute before getting something in return. And it seems like in your case definitely worked out. So I see that as a lesson there as well. So pretty awesome.
Yeah.
Um, yeah.
Yeah, that's a great
And,
point.
and
And I think it's a good reflection on leadership in general, right? Like, I mean, to me, that's a really nice summary because that's something that really drives my approach, whether it's as a leader or as a coach or when I'm developing other people, is seek to give before you look to get.
yeah, there's a saying there as well, right? Totally makes sense. And so you got into instructional design. You even eventually became a manager and managed instructional designers. Um, any reflections on that sort of like move from being individual contributor to being a manager, like a people manager? I guess one of probably the first time that you got an opportunity to do that. How did that play out for you?
Yeah, I think the key transition to make at that point in a person's career, and myself included, is a lot of times we get promoted because we excel in the functional skills that we bring to the table. And then it requires stepping back from those, even when we have a really clear vision of what great looks like, and being able to give the space for someone else to develop and potentially take a different path to what great looks like in their eyes, and to be able to support their development in really leading the work. Um, so for me, that's kind of the key as a first time manager for anybody, is recognizing that transition. And some of it comes with letting go of some things.
I mean, for one, it's a totally different job, and I think you summed it up pretty well. You can excel as an individual contributor. You get quote unquote promoted to a manager, but it's a totally different role, totally different job, and it requires a lot of letting go to learn something that's new, right? So it sounds like you had that experience there, going from instructional designer to a manager of instructional design. Um, and what led you, so at some point, around that time, you fell in love with executive coaching. What kind of led you to that? How did you stumble upon coaching others?
Uh-huh. Yeah. So in part of my work throughout my career, I've done leadership development, whether that's designing programs, also delivering the programs. So there's a natural connection there. And so the thing with that is really, um, I discovered that because we were looking to make an even bigger impact with our leadership development when I was at IGT. And so, as part of my role there, I got certified as an executive coach, and then was able to work one on one with people, which is a really unique and I think powerful way to work with people on their leadership development.
Got it. Got it. So you got certified as a coach, and the you got a lot of sort of juice out of working with people one on one, and specifically executives at IGT at the time, right? And
Yes.
so
Yep.
and I want to get back to coaching. hmm Go ahead.
No,
Um,
please continue.
yeah, I wanted to get back to coaching. Yeah, I wanted to get back to coaching in a bit, but in la last handful of years, you've been working as a head of L&D at an e-tailer. And what were the skills that you kind of brought in, from both executive coaching and instructional design to now actually managing the entirety of learning and development role? How did that work out? What was transferable? What was new? What was surprising?
Uh-huh. Yeah. So I would say, while I grew up through instructional design, two of the focuses that I had throughout my career from the beginning were working on change management initiatives, so related to the employee experience. So a lot of times we measure the quality of the employee experience with employee engagement surveys. So identifying what are the key drivers we can impact there, how can we continue to evolve the culture to be even more of who we want to be. um, and so that was one of the key transferable skills for sure. um, and then how do we infuse culture and business priorities in learning and talent development programs? So that's something for me, a key transferable skill from instructional design to a learning and development leader leading a function is asking great questions, which is kind of the thread through executive coaching too, right? Because the more you can unlock what is it that the business is really after, what is it that an individual is really looking to do for themselves through their own development, et cetera, the more you can make really relevant and impactful learning solutions to address those.
Got it. So it comes back to individuals and it comes back to unlocking like, even though you're managing the entirety of learning and development, it's about understanding the needs of the business and then connecting it to individuals and asking the right questions to figure out what would unlock them to be able to be effective at that particular role, right? And then
100%.
going back to your executive coaching, like, yeah, I remember I was asking you about your philosophy. Like, I kind of my interest spiked when you mentioned executive coaching, and because it comes in so many different shapes and sizes. What is the approach that you got certified in, or that you believe in, that works for you when it comes to coaching?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Look, I'm an ICF certified executive coach, and I can relate with what you're saying. Um, Two things that I really stand behind. One is stakeholder-centered coaching. So to me, that's all about stakeholder-centered leadership development. For me, that started and really piqued my interest initially the first time I was getting a 360 for myself. The first time I got a 360, I debriefed with an external coach, and I took away the key learnings from the 360, but there was no conversation about what I should do after, how I should talk about what I learned from my 360 with my leader, with my team, etc. And maybe a week later I had gone out to lunch with my boss, and in conversation she started crying and she said, "You don't trust me enough to share your 360 results with me." And that was a total blind spot for me. It wasn't that I was intentionally not sharing it. It's that there wasn't a framework in place for how I should talk about what I wanted to get better at, my key focuses, and to involve other people in the process. And when I came across stakeholder centered coaching, I realized that that's what that solves for. It's about making change visible. It's about involving the people who matter most to you as a leader, and often that's your direct reports, it's your boss, it's your peers. It's and it's about involving them and getting their feed forward and input into how you can be an even better leader. And then it's about measuring that and the actual impact that a person has in terms of increasing their effectiveness as a leader. So that's the approach that I like to take for myself, as well as when I'm working with leaders one on one for their development. And I've seen great things come from it.
Got it. So it's the 360 is just the beginning. It's not an end in itself, right? So 360 just opens the door for further conversations, and there's an invitation to kind of double click on everything that was provided in there. There's also an opportunity for humility in that, and sort of I think we briefly talked about like the beginner's mind and being open and humble to say,
Hmm.
hey, like, thank you, and these are the things that I would like to work on. That's what I kind of heard in all that.
Absolutely. And so for me, one of the things that I really like about taking a stakeholder-centered approach to leadership development and as a coach myself is it creates the kind of culture we want. Um, I mean, I can't think of a culture in an organization that I know of that doesn't want its leaders to have courage, humility, and discipline in the way they approach their roles and their own development. And this provides a structure to be able to do that. And every time I've worked with leaders, I've always built in a process afterwards for here's how you're going to talk about this with leaders. Here are some suggestions for how to approach that. Because I do find too often a 360 is used as an end, and then we leave the leader on their own to figure out the rest.
Yeah, that's been my observation as well, and this is why I thought 360 as a beginning and not as an end in itself is very interesting way to kind of think about that. So that was what I picked up from our conversation. Um, Another thing that I was also
Hmm.
curious about when you and I previously talked was the energy leadership as part of your coaching practice.
Hmm.
What does that mean to you?
Yeah, so energy leadership is another piece that I really bring in both to my own leadership as well as when I'm working as a coach. Because if we think about, our executive presence, and that can feel like a very big and vague term for people, and it can mean a whole lot of different things. Um, but when we think about our executive presence as the energy we bring to any relationship, any interaction, um, on the low end of that, it can be the victim mentality and behaviors. It can be blaming other people. Um, and then as we shift our energy, it's about taking accountability. It's about empathizing with another person and their point of view and seeking to help them. And then as we kind of continue with our energy and how we shift that even higher, it can be about finding opportunity in any situation. It can be about um, finding peace with exactly the way things are. And, even more so, it can be the highest level is really how we tap into our wisdom and really our creativity. So it's a conscious choice, but it helps us with our mindset and our behavior in our leadership. And I found, particularly anytime you're leading through change or uncertainty, what people recognize about you is the energy that you bring to a situation and to them personally. And so for me, that's a really helpful way to empower leaders to think about that.
Got it. And so, what are some of the? Do you have a specific set of tools, or like how do you go about that? Like, how do you empower leaders to be mindful, I guess, of the
Mhm.
energy they're bringing in, and be conscious of that?
Yeah, so what I'll do when I work with leaders in that capacity is, yes, sure, there's an assessment that I can work with them, to help them recognize some of the core thoughts and behaviors that are associated with each of these, and then to talk about how and when these show up in what situations with what people, and actually how they look. So that's definitely a piece of it. Um, but a lot of, just like with anything in leadership development, it's then how do I recognize this in my day to day? And then when I start to recognize it, how do I then make a choice about what I actually want to do? And, similar to stakeholder centered coaching, it's all about making little experiments, right? So make little experiments and see how it goes and what you can learn from that, and, how you want that to shape you as a leader.
Got it. Got it. And so one of the things that I'm sort of like observing, it seems like you really enjoy leadership, executive coaching. So like working with leaders, working one-on-one, empowering them, pulling sort of like that superpower out of them, and having them lean into their powers. So that's on one side. On the other hand, you also enjoy building learning and development function from ground up. That's what you've recently done.
Mhm.
And it seems like it's a different job, right? Like it's one is more building systems and teams and putting all that in place, and the other one is more intimate and working one-on-one. How do you balance the two, or how do you see the two intertwined or kind of like come together and work together as different aspects of learning and development, managing,
Uh-huh.
building it from ground up, and working one-on-one?
Yeah, that's a great question. So for me, the way I think about it is sitting at the intersection of talent development, leadership development, and one-on-one executive development. Um, and then, of course, building a team to support those things. So the first thing that I always look to do, and I look to do continuously, is to understand what are the needs in the business. So the more I can understand the business challenges and what are we trying to solve for, whether that's organic growth that we need a talent pipeline for, whether that's really looking at our succession plan and our high potentials, and what are the key behaviors that people need to be able to be ready for the next, and when do we need them ready for that role, to be able to make an intentional choice, especially when I'm coaching in my own organization, about who I work one-on-one with and what we focus on. um, so that's one way I see the intersection between, talent development, leadership development, and then one-on-one executive coaching. When I think about building a team, again, a lot of it has to do with, what are the needs for the business. Like when I think about my approach to learning and development, leadership development overall, it's an approach of with a mindset of stewardship. So when I say stewardship, I mean I'm as a business leader, I'm working to support the long-term vision and strategy and sustainability of the organization. And then as a leader of a function, I'm making sure that my team and our services align to that. So sometimes, for instance, if we're talking about scalability or, knowing where we're going to develop new business in the coming years, I can think about, okay, what are the functions that I need my team to do? Where do I need them to do it? And, is this something that we need to do over a short period of time, or is this something that we need to sustain over a long period of time that will help me understand, is this someone on my team who's going to do it? Is this something I'm going to develop someone in the business to do it based on the time frame and the duration? So those are some examples of how I try to look at the intersection of those things.
Yeah, and you mentioned the word stewardship a couple of times. I remember, I was really curious. It sounds like it's a mindset, right? More than anything, and that's how you use it. How do you how do you uh, how do you foster that mindset? I guess in leaders, like
Yeah.
how does it manifest itself?
Yeah. So when I think about it in working directly with leaders, for me, fostering a mindset of stewardship is, and uh, a mindset of service as a leader is probably a bit more relatable for people. When I think
Yeah.
stewardship, I think, how do you take the knowledge, skills, and potential you have today, amplify that for an even bigger impact, with the people that you serve, with the broader organization, and ultimately for yourself, right? And for
Mhm.
your so one of the things I love about working in learning and development is when we develop leaders, we're not just developing them with skills that they can use at work, in their defined work place and time frame. They're skills they can use in their personal life. And for me, that's about helping people to have a better life. And that, I think, is compelling to any leader who wants to do that.
Got it. Got it. And so, given all these things that you're doing, so from executive coaching to building learning development functions from ground up, uh, given where you sit in your in that whole food chain, what is something that you're excited about? Like, what's on the horizon for Denise?
Yeah. Yeah, look, I mean, I think it's really continuing to do just that and, bring that to my work in learning and development and leadership development. In the teams that I lead and the businesses that I support and in the individuals that I make an impact with. What I'm really excited about in the space of learning and development, there's a few things. One of them is, look, every organization is looking to scale, deliver learning and development strategy at scale and at pace in some way or another, in line with their business priorities. And so
Hmm.
for me, I believe that that looks different depending what the organization is. Sure, there's organizational trends out there. We've all seen them, in terms of whether that's AI or whether that's broadening our footprint for how we can reach more people more quickly. Again, whether that's tech or, whether that's people enabled. For me, one of the things that's really interesting is about looking at where is the impact that we can uniquely make as humans in this time, in the world, and in business. And one of the things that I see consistently and I hear consistently as feedback in our leadership development programs is the value that people get from learning with their peers. And the most common thing they say is, now I know I'm not alone. And I think there's such power in that. You know, yes, in the skills they develop, but also in that feeling of connection and community. And as we really think about how do we bring intentional purposefulness to bringing people together and what they're there for, that's something that I'm continually interested in as well, as it relates to the products and services we provide as a L&D industry.
So bringing people together, creating those moments of like them learning. It sounds like it could be a cohort-based learning. It could be live sessions, but the point is that they're kind of building those bonds among themselves, right? And getting the sense of belonging to one another. Um, yeah,
Mhm.
yeah, that's super interesting. I usually get a lot of like AI and things like that, and it's
I know.
interesting how you kind of went. Yeah, this turned toward more like, no, we're humans, and like we need to belong and we need to connect with one another.
Yeah. Yeah, it's about, I get for me it's about finding that differentiator on the human side.
Yeah, yeah, got it, got it. So like looking back at your career, you started in marketing. You did not want to market toothpaste and orange juice anymore, jumped
Mhm.
into or paid forward your way into instructional design and then becoming a manager and becoming certified as executive coach, building learning and development organizations basically from ground up. Uh, Looking back at all that accomplishment, what would be something that you would, you know, give as a piece of advice to your younger self?
Yeah. A piece of advice to my younger self would be trust your gut.
Uh,
So, um, the most interesting class that I never took was a class on, it was titled Ways of Knowing. And the title really intrigued me. Um, because I think at the time I was like, wasn't there just one way of knowing? Like, I'm a spreadsheet person. I'm a, like reason your way to the solution person. I'm a think about your own past experience and use it kind of like those are my ways of knowing just, at my core. And yet when I reflect on, every major decision I've had to make, whether that be personal, professional, and leading a team, etc., there's always an element of what was my gut saying. And every single time it was right. Sometimes I would get there faster and sometimes it would take me more time. But I think probably there's more out there today than there was when, my younger self was around. But that's definitely a piece of advice because it's something that I've leaned much more into as I've progressed in my career. And I think, we all want to kind of help uh, accelerate, that learning for other people. So that's what I would give my younger self is the advice to trust my gut.
Got it. So here a lot of courage in that, right? And yeah. staying true to yourself and to your own purpose and so forth. Well, that was pretty awesome. Thank you, Denise. I really appreciate having you on this episode, and looking forward to catching up with you in the near future and seeing how that all works out.
Thank you, Marco. Likewise. Thanks so much for having me today. Bye.
That's it for this episode of the Intelligence Amplifiers. If you like what you've heard, be sure to subscribe or follow so you don't miss out on the future episodes. And if you're interested in being a guest or have a question, check out the episode description for how to reach us. Also, don't forget to check out Plus Plus, the platform that makes collective intelligence at scale possible. Find out more at plusplus.co. Thank you for listening, and until next time, keep amplifying.